Hey guys, thank you so much for deciding to hang out with me. This is Tasha and welcome to my whatever this is. Today I wanted to jump on the bandwagon of a few wonderful YouTubers I watch who shared about what books have really touched their souls and what books meant something to them. And I just thought, what a cool way to get to know someone and really see who they are on the inside. I think we can learn a lot about other people by just simply looking at their bookshelf. I think that we can kind of get an idea of who someone is by seeing what they read, and I just thought it was so much fun. And honestly, any excuse to talk about books, and you have me. I'm so there. I'm so there. I'm such a nerd. My book stack is here, and there's another one over here. So it's here, which looks like a big stack. I'm going to try to get through this fairly quickly. I don't want this video to go on and on forever, and I know it could because I could literally talk about these books all day. It was kind of hard picking which ones, or not so much picking which ones, but determining what books I love just because I love them, and what books actually really impacted me and have become soul food for me over the years. That wasn't easy because there's some books that I just feel like I want to talk about and share, but it's only because I just love them so much. It's not so much because they've impacted me. So these books are ones that have stayed with me. Most of them I remember quotes from, or I think about them in my day-to-day life or apply things to those books, like when you have a book that really has impacted you a lot, it stays with you. So these are ones that have stayed with me throughout the years, and most of them are books that I've read a long time ago that I still really love to read now. I've grown up with a lot of these, and I think that's super cool. So anyway, let's start. I don't want to talk about that one first, actually. I want to talk about this one first. This book is called The Thief of Always by Clive Barker. It's about a little boy. It's a young adult novel, and it's about a young boy who is wishing his time away. He's really, really bored and unhappy. And then a creature comes and takes him to this place called Holiday House, where you get to live all of the holidays basically in one day, and you get whatever you want. And it's just kind of a kid's dream. And you realize, reading the book, and these aren't any spoilers or anything, but you realize that time is so precious, and how when you're a kid, you want, like, when I was a kid, I was always like kind of living between holidays. It was like, how many weeks till Christmas? How many weeks till summer vacation? How many weeks till this? Halloween? Stuff like that. It was always like counting down, wanting time to go by, thinking when I'm an adult, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and just wishing away childhood. And I think a lot of us do that. And then you become an adult, and then it's the complete opposite. And you're like, no, time, slow down, stop. Like, you're going way too fast. And I think that what happens is that we're as humans, like, we're never happy, and we're always either trying to speed things up or slow them down, and we just need to live in the moment. And that's kind of a moral in this book. And it's just the way Clive Barker tells the story. It's like a fairy tale. It's got magic in it. It's got scariness in it. There's a little bit of horror, of course, because it is Clive Barker. It's very dark, but it's also very positive, and it stayed with me. One of the quotes from this book is that sooner or later, the beetle and the worm will find their way into everything. And I've kind of pondered on that quote for the past 15 years, if not more, and it's something that has always stayed with me, is that quote and that part of this book, and that lesson that life is so short, live in the present, because the beetle and worm is going to get you, basically. Dark. I love it. My Aunt Donna gave me this book when I was probably 13 or 14, and I've read it to my sister. My sister has read it to her son. I've used this book to teach a little girl that I was tutoring to read, and to appreciate reading, I should say. And just, it means so much to me. And I think that if you're looking for a little bit of dark fantasy, this is the book to go to. I just love that book. Next, I have In the Circle by Ellen Hawke. I don't know if this book is available anymore. I think it might be out of print, which is really unfortunate because it's a beautiful book. This is one of the first books that I picked up on witchcraft, and I am so grateful and thankful that it was Ellen who introduced me a lot to the path instead of some other authors that were quite popular at the time. She has a completely lyrical way of explaining her craft and her magic, and just when you're reading the book, you feel like you're there. It's really like, look, like listen, just listen, okay? Full moon. At the bottom of the garden, in the stone circle, we watch through the branches of the apple trees as the full moon comes up over the roof of the house. The sky is clear, not yet completely dark, but smattered with stars. A bat flits and wheels, darting after airborne insects. The scent of honeysuckle is strong. And it goes on and on like that. It's just, her writing is beautiful, and yes, I love, love, love this book. In the Circle, Ellen Hawke, it's just, it's amazing. It's a really, really good one. Next, which is a little bit, I was torn between this and honestly The Satanic Witch. I'm not going to say that I identify as a Satanist, but I definitely have applied a lot of Anton LaVey's philosophies, ideas, ritual, even his ritual in my witchcraft. So I definitely have a strong connection to Anton LaVey, and I've read all of his books. I've read his biography. I've watched all of his documentaries on YouTube. I really admire this man, and I know he has said a lot of things that we can look back and say that was a little bit off color, off, inappropriate, but in the end, there's still a lot of really good information that he has. And his theology that you are a god and that you should treat yourself like a god and that you should treat other people well. And it's not what people think. And I really, when I read this, it opened my mind so much, and it made my path turn direction. Prior to reading the Satanic Bible, I was a Wiccan. And after reading the Satanic Bible, I kind of just decided that I wanted to create my own path. I wanted to just find a way to have my life, have witchcraft, but to do it myself and to find my own way. And he was a big player. This book was a big component in that, because it pushes individuality. It pushes confidence and believing in yourself. It's very much, it came into my life at the right time. I was very depressed, very much in a dark spot, and it really helped get me out of my hole. So this book is very special to me. I've recommended it to so many people who I know who are having problems or having self-esteem issues, and no one will read it. No one I've ever recommended it to has ever actually read it for that. And I really think that's unfortunate. I think a lot of it's because it's the Satanic Bible and people don't want to be caught maybe reading it or whatever, but it's really sad because there's a lot of really great advice in this book, and it's helped me a lot. So I had to make sure it was in my video. Next up, I have Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain is now kind of an archetype that I work with spiritually. He is the rebel, the badass, the guy who is going to do things his own way. He's very much an individual, and I will always, I don't know, I just carry him with me. I really, really, truly, I feel like I was touched by his art and his creativity, and I'm no chef or anything, but I took a lot of great tips from this book. He has stated in the book that if you are too lazy to actually mince and cut your garlic, that you don't deserve garlic, and that's always kind of stuck in my mind. Or you only need one chef's knife. You don't need like a whole array of them. You just need one good sharp chef's knife and you're good to go. So stuff like that I've kept with me. I've learned more about cooking from Anthony Bourdain than I probably have anyone else, and I really feel like this book has touched my spirit, and I really miss him a lot, and I'm just happy and grateful that we have what he's given us. The next one is Almost Home by Damien Eccles. If you're not familiar with Damien Eccles, you may be familiar with with the West Memphis 3 case that was taking place in the early 90s. Damien and 2 other teenagers were accused of murdering 3 boys, and Damien was put on death row. They were all sentenced to life, but Damien actually got death. This is the story, in his own words, leading up to that point. He wrote this while he was in prison. It is extremely sad. It's extremely upsetting. It's also very eye-opening. It is heart-wrenching, but it's worth reading, and it's really it'll open your eyes a lot to what's going on with some injustice. And he was a Wiccan, you know, and he was a goth kid, and he listened to heavy metal music, and I just think what happened to him could have happened to maybe any of us, right? Like, so it's a really good story, and he's someone that's interesting to follow now. He's out of prison. He's been out of prison since about 2012, I believe. And he's a successful writer. He's published 2 books since this one. His latest one is all about magic and how he used magic and the occult to get him through his death row sentence and being on death row for, I think it was like over 18 years. Like, it's just nuts. And yeah, he's amazing, and he's on Instagram, he's on Facebook, he's all over the place. Damien Echols, he's an amazing modern magician. I think that he is someone to admire and look up to and learn from. So this book has really, really, really touched me. Next, I had to include Chuck. So this again is where I was getting into books that I love versus books that have actually really provided me with some soul food, right? And Chuck was on the fence. He was I wasn't sure. But the difference with Chuck and other books that I love is that every time I read anything by Chuck Palahniuk, by the end of that book, I've gone through a complete roller coaster of emotions. This man can assassinate you with a sentence. Like, oh man, he's intense, and his writing is fun, and it's interesting, and there's always a big twist. He catches you off guard. He's just amazing. Chuck's amazing, and he's incredibly quotable. And my favorite quote from this book is that 2 of the characters are out on a balcony, and they're overlooking a city, and one of the characters says, "The future is wasted on some people." That's become a mantra for me. That's something that I actually tell myself a lot, and it's not to be a dink or to be negative, but I use it to remind myself, like, don't be one of those people where your future is wasted. Don't be that person whose future is wasted. And I just the future is wasted on some people. And that kind of can keep me motivated. And I owe that to Chuck. And I think that I've spent a lot of time reading his books, like, during my early 20s, and Chuck, I love Chuck, I guess, and I had to include one of his books. And this is a great one. Invisible Monsters is a great book. It's probably one of my favorite ones that he's written, and you should definitely check it out if you haven't read his books. Next is The Tricksters by Margaret May. I read this book when I was probably 13, I would say, and it was kind of my sexual awakening book. This is the first book I ever read that had a sex scene in it, and it's romantic and spooky again. It was during a time when I was a young girl. Like, I can remember reading through books in an afternoon. Like, books were so intense back then, and they stayed with you, and I would be so excited just to read, and I could do it for hours and hours and hours, and I don't know, it was just, images were clearer and words were more vibrant, and it was different then and than it is now. And I read this book during that prime, those awesome girly reading years. I fell in love with the characters. I fell in love with the main character. I fell in love with the antagonist, Ovid, one of the brothers. It's about a girl who basically, she's on vacation at Christmas time in New Zealand, and she marries herself to the sea, and by doing so, she invites these ghosts into her life, and she ends up falling for one of them and having sex with them for the first time. And like I say, it was definitely, this was my gateway. I read this, so this was my first book with a little bit of sex. And then after that, I read Interview with a Vampire by Anne Rice, and that was just like, holy moly. I was not the same after that. I sure was educated, but I had to include the tricksters. And last but not least, and we're doing good, I wanted to do this video under 20 minutes and we're at 15, 12-ish, and that's awesome. Mastering the Tarot by Eden Gray. Mastering the Tarot has been my tarot Bible. I have flowers falling out of my book. That's how you know you're a witch. Anyway, I have read this so many times. The pages are starting to kind of fall, and it's just, I've had it forever. Anne will always be my teacher and the person who really opened me up to tarot, but this book has been an excellent substitute teacher for the past few years, and it has definitely taught me a lot about the cards. Some of the descriptions of the court cards are a little bit dated because they're so gender specific, but aside from that, the information is super valuable, and it's the book that I recommend to people when they ask me about a tarot book. This would be the first one that I would recommend. I know I was talking a little fast there, and I apologize, but I could talk about these books forever, and I don't want to do that. Thank you so much for hanging out with me and watching this video and spending some time in the spare room. I don't often film in here. Eventually I'm going to do a little tour of, oops, sorry, we're going Blair Witch here. Just a second. There we go. I'm going to do a little tour of my little apothecary and my magical herbs and the stuff that I keep in here. And a little tour. Let's see if I can spin you around. A little bookshelf tour as well. So anyway, we'll spend some more time in this room. That's it for me. Thank you so much for hanging out, and please share with me what books touched your soul because I want to hear about them. I want to get to know you better. Thank you, and have a great night. Bye.